outline was that they were struggling to find narrative clarity. It was the very last bullet point. I don't remember that was last class necessarily, was it? Maybe it might have been actually last class on Wednesday, in which we talked about the struggle towards narrative clarity, the move to the smoothing out of, so are we going there now?
Mm-hmm.
All right, to move to the smoothing out of the rough stuff that we saw in the Great Train Robbery. That if Trip to the Moon was one scene, and then another scene, and then another scene, you and I see through that's just like a live theater moving sets off of the theater to show a movement in time and space. That then with the Great Train Robbery, Porter recognizes that no, it's the shot that matters. By shot moving the story forward in a sort of way. We saw an example of that when, after the train has been brought, right, the guys go into the ticket taker booth, then they go outside to the train, then they get on the train, and a couple of other things happen. And then in terms of time and space, we jump. We're not exactly sure we know where we go. We go to the ticket taker's office where the little girl in the pink dress is throwing water on the guy and praying, trying to wake him up, and that sort of thing. But in terms of time, we don't know where that is. Right? We don't know, is this happening now in terms of the old unfolding of the robbery, or did this happen while we were watching the robbery happen? But it doesn't matter. Right? So you don't even think about it. The jumping in time, in this case, and back to a recognizable space, doesn't register in your mind in that way, because it doesn't matter when it was. So it's flowing, and it's linear, and it's smooth. Then, if you recall, it jumps after that, it jumps to where some guys are having a party and they're shooting guns at the dandy's feet, and we watch them dancing for like 3 minutes with no ability to know where we are. The film has not individualized the bank robbers, that it's not given us a close-up so that I could recognize him in this scene. So I don't know who they are, I don't know right where we are. When the door opens and someone rushes in, if you recognize that that was the ticket taker, now you know where we are. But if you didn't recognize it, you're still kind of lost, because the next cut, if you recall, they are right behind the train robbers in a shootout on their horses. So a jump in time and space, again, that's not at all linear or fluid at all. Because you think to yourself, where are we now? And as soon as you think that, you're not focused in the picture, you're thinking outside of, about the movie, about the story as it's unfolding. So Griffith is coming along now, right on the heels of Edwin S. Porter in the aughts, in the first decade of the 20th century, and he is going to be the guy who takes us, along with Porter, but then Griffith more so, in much the strongest way that classical Hollywood cinema is going to be tethered through until the 1960s. We're going to come back to this argument overall until the 1960s, how it works, classical Hollywood cinema works to hide all of its construction, all of the thousands and thousands of choices that go into a movie. What color to use, where to put the camera, where to move the camera, how to move the camera, what type of lighting to use, when to edit, what type of edit, the thousands and thousands of choices that go into every single movie that you watch. Griffith is going to show us how to smooth those out. Because if we kind of think about it in a kind of literal fashion, every time you edit, right, there's a shot, then there's an edit, then there's a shot, however long these things are, however long these shot lengths are lasting, every time you edit, you're disrupting something and going into the middle of something else. So even if I'm doing a shot, reverse shot, I'll tell you what that means in just a moment, even if I'm editing back and forth between these two people, as they're having a conversation on screen, every time I edit, I'm stopping this person talking and going to this person. Or I'm stopping this image, rather, and jumping to this image. That is, the edit is disruptive. It interrupts. Griffith, that linearity, flow, verisimilitude, right? Verisimilitude, veritas is at the beginning, the Latin root word for truth. That it gets, right, that it assimilates, or probably it replicates truth, reality in front of the screen, so you don't see all of these edits. If I showed you a conversation between these two people and edited back and forth, you wouldn't pay attention to the edits at all. You wouldn't notice them, they wouldn't register you to, you certainly wouldn't think about them at all, because that shot, those edits would have been elided in that way, smoothed over so that it runs in a linear, flowing, continuous fashion in that way. Griffith is the guy who's going to do that. So strongly is he going to do it that we would claim about him that he gives us absolutely the basics of cinematic grammar. How to construct what I'm going to call in just a moment image sentences. How to edit around in a way so that it comes across as linear and flowing. That is, he's the father, this is so stupid, he's the father of cinematic grammar in that sense. The way he tells films, and we're only going to watch clips from one film called The Birth of a Nation. We're only going to watch clips from Birth of a Nation. We're going to find out how it is that he makes movies that really, they still look exactly like movies today. They edit in precisely the manner in which most movies that you go and see at the theater, they edit, they tell stories, they unfold in the same way that Griffith was developing in the aughts and the teen years, and then with the release of Birth of a Nation in like 1914. I don't care necessarily about that date, but about that, I want to kind of show you where we are in terms of time, that he edits and moves around and moves his camera in the same way that your predominant film directors do today. Imagine if you were still reading novels that were written in exactly the same syntax and grammar that Henry James wrote novels in 1912. Well, he wasn't writing novels at that time, but anyway, someone who was writing in 1912. How bored, you would read less than you do today in that sense, right? Because you'd be so bored with the pattern, and yet, still with film, we go to them, right? We still we don't put demands on film to tell more complicated stories or inventive in certain ways, right? We've recently seen a spate of inventive, different types of filmmaking with Paranormal Activity, Blair Witch Project probably first, through Paranormal Activity, incorporating, like the Blair Witch Project, handheld camera, the entire thing told as if it were found footage by a handheld camera with a group of people in the, it's a horror movie if you've not seen it. Is that a movie that registers to people anymore? Blair Witch Project? Yeah. I saw that movie when it came out on its first night at a midnight showing in winter, and I ride my bike everywhere, and so at 2 a.m. I got out of that movie, pitch black, pouring snow like you just can't imagine, and I had to ride home. And so if you ever watch that movie, I was scared bejesus, and I don't get scared about anything at all. But the technology of that, the way in which it told that story was so fresh in 1998, that we'd never seen anything like that, and it scared the bejesus out of me. And I pull up to my house, my bike's supposed to go in the basement, and I'm like, no way, I'm not doing this. Because if you've ever seen the movie, the last image is of a guy in the basement going blah, 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 or something like that, and that crap still like makes my hair stand. I promise you that it just went blah, like that. Freaked me the heck out, right? Absolutely couldn't go on. But the way of telling that story was fresh and new. I mean, almost all done entirely with close-ups of people like going, oh crap. Okay, well, okay, it's less scarier than that, right? But that whole thing. But Griffith is going to give us the ways in which we edit the standard movie, right? Paranormal Activity has succeeded in a way, right, in exploiting that type of aesthetic, right, by doing it by, is that a CCTV? Is that what they do? Closed circuit? It's just
I think you would use a regular camera.
Just a regular camera that it has up there?
Stationary.
But a stationary camera, right? I actually haven't seen it. Is it worth seeing?
I like the first one.
You like the first one? Worked all right? All right, regardless. So Griffith is the guy who's going to develop that for us. So let's move on in through and find out the specifics that he does, right? So if you recall, back in the day in the aughts, we're doing one-reel films. They're lasting 20 minutes. They hadn't moved on to thinking about film in terms of a night's entertainment. Griffith, more than anybody else, is going to be the guy who developed, this bullet point is connected to this one, they push more than anybody else to make film the centerpiece, the feature, right? The feature attraction, your feature presentation, to make movies a valid art form that could be the feature of a night's entertainment. Because you still probably are going to the movies and seeing live act of some type also. Griffith says, no, man, this technology and the aesthetics that I'm developing don't need all that sideshow stuff. They can stand alone. So it's a move out of the one-reelers, right, one reel of film, into, for Birth of a Nation, a movie that's like 3 hours and 20 minutes long. So imagine significant change that happens if you've been watching 20 to 30-minute movies and then suddenly you go to something and it's 3 hours long. Birth of a Nation concerns the Civil War and the birth not of the United States after the Civil War and its reconstruction, but the birth of the Ku Klux Klan as a nation. Right? The nation that they're referring to here is the Klan of the nation, the KKK. As the KKK was virtually dead, or was very, very quiet after the Civil War. It had gone away significantly by the 1880s. By the time that D.W. Griffith releases Birth of a Nation, at the moment of Birth of a Nation's release, the Klan membership and its prominence in the United States rises immediately. So strong was that we can see the strength of that rather. And I think it's the case that this is the first movie ever screened in the White House. You know, the president he's got a movie theater in there, and he can watch any movie he wants at any moment, right? Just any new release, it comes to the White House, even though it doesn't show up on Flixer. They show there. I think this was the first movie ever screened in the White House. And I think it was Woodrow Wilson would have been president at this time. Woodrow Wilson, you can imagine him coming out of the movie and going, "Hey, sir, can you tell us, what did you think about that movie?" Remember, it's content. He says, that's history written with lightning. And what he's referring to must have been the strength in which that storytelling, that continuous grammar unfolding that makes it look like reality, verisimilitude, truth, unfolding linearly in front of you. That's what he's referring to. We'll see in a minute that Griffith in intertitles references that he's being honest, that he's giving a historically accurate portrait of South Carolina after the Civil War, that he's giving an accurate presentation of what it looked like in the South Carolina House of the Legislature with only recently freed slaves and northern carpetbaggers in the assembly in South Carolina. He's going to make appeals to the truthfulness of this. And you have to remember that you and I take for granted, we no longer believe that phrase, that a picture doesn't lie. Right? That used to work, right? For your grandparents and maybe your parents, the idea of, well, that picture doesn't lie, you know that that's not true anymore because you've seen the cover of Cosmo. Right? Or Vogue or something like that. You know that with what is that software called? Photoshop, right? That the picture lies. Indeed, we knew it even before the notion of Photoshop. That in the movie Blade Runner, a science fiction noir, a film noir type of detective movie, comes out in '86 or something like that. Futuristic film noir detective doing stuff. Harrison Ford, Han Solo is going to get, he's the detective. He's going to go try to figure something out. Well, at one time, someone like knocks on his door and leaves something and runs away, and he's like, "What's this?" And it's a photograph. And so he goes over to his computer and he slides it in the scanner of the computer, and he can talk to the computer. It's the future. Ooh, that's my iPhone. Never mind, right? What's her name? Sorry. Whatever, right? So we can do this stuff, right? But he talks to his computer and goes, okay, scan left, zoom in, pan right, magnify. You know, he's zooming around the picture like, what is this? Well, as he zooms around, so he's looking for replicants. He's looking for some non-humans who are infecting, about to take over the world. Okay, that's not really true. But anyway, he's zooming in and he zooms in and he looks in the back of the picture as he zooms in and he sees a door that is open and he sees that inside of there's a mirror. So he zooms in on the mirror that's inside the room, that's in the back of the picture, and the mirror's reflecting somebody in the bathtub, and it looks like skin is coming off. It's a replicant, right? And he goes, ha ha, I know where that is. And he goes off to investigate, right? Well, someone left that and that picture lied. They constructed something in that to get him to go and investigate over there while they went and did stuff over here, sort of thing. Right? Pictures do lie for us. But in 1915, when that comes out, the strength, the truth, the connection that moved to that verisimilitude and that linear flow, it must have looked like, wow, that's history written with lightning. So you have to think, when we're watching the South Carolina legislature here in a minute, and someone who is ostensibly a recently freed slave is eating a chicken, eating fried chicken like this, and you got a liquor bottle in another hand, and another guy's got watermelon and chomping, right? You imagine the strength of that stuff, right? That if you had been watching clam digging and girls pillow fighting and all of that stuff, and suddenly the evolution of cinema did this to you. Remember, you couldn't cross-reference. You couldn't easily reference history books even in general, right? Obviously you don't have the internet, but you couldn't go and verify. It must have felt unbelievably powerful. Indeed, we know that it was felt unbelievably powerful. History written with lightning, the President of the United States says, which validates it, right? When the President says something, whether it's true or not doesn't matter, but it validates it in some sort of way. But we also know it mattered because there were riots right here, like right down the street at Auburn Avenue. Riots at the film's release on its screening. In St. Louis and Chicago, major riots. I mean, Chicago like got a bit on fire, but out of riots, people who were totally against the film and the type of presentation. So we look at Griffith and we recognize that he's really this enigmatic guy. He's both the guy who gave us the notion of cinematic grammar, the foundation of that stuff, and he's an unrepentant. There are not even going to be many African Americans in the movie. They're going to be white people painted in face, right? Painted blackface. It won't be real hard to pick out at all in just a moment, right? So we have to deal with that, right? That is, we don't not deal, right? Regularly, the DVD, when I go get it from the library, I'm going to have to order another one because someone scraped it up. I know where that comes from, right? This is trash. This is disgusting. We need to get rid of that. My thinking on an ideological perspective on that, man, that stuff that scares us, that we don't know what it is, that is hurtful, is stuff we should be opening up and paying way more attention to. Not stuff that we ought to get rid of and push aside. We do that all the time, and we see how much harm continually comes from that sort of thing. But that DVD is so screwed up, I hope it makes it through today because somebody has scraped it up. I've had them buy 5 copies in the last 10 years that I've been here of this movie, right? Because people respond to it. I know both where that response comes from, like going, dude, that's just like nasty stuff. But man, that's exactly what we better be talking about in that way. All right? So let's look at the specific ways in which Griffith can justify a much lengthier film that becomes the feature of a night's entertainment. So the rest of this is outlined, and it'll look like a lot as I scroll down it, and it goes just a little bit further. But I want to point your attention, it's going to be 2 major points with smaller ones in between them. Interframe and intra-frame narration. Right? Interframe means between frames. This is interframe. Every single edit, right? It comes between the shots, interstate. I-75 is an interstate. It goes between Florida to Georgia to South Carolina, wherever it ends up going, right? Between the states. So point A1 up here, all of this stuff has to do with editing, between shots, right? Interframe narration. And then point 2, intra-frames means inside of, right? So in effect, this is pretty hokey, but I-285 is an intrastate. Now, I'm not going to run for governor and make that the top of my platform for being elected. Hey, we want to change grammatically correct interstate I-285 to interstate 285, or intrastate, but it's an intrastate because it stays inside of the state. All of these elements in point number 2 have to do, or point 1 has to do with editing, this has to do with elements of mise-en-scène. Mise-en-scène, the kind of literal translation would be like the putting in the scene, kind of this direct translation of it from the French. But what we refer to is everything except the camera or editing, right? That is what's in front of the camera. So if I'm going to film in this classroom right now, I'm going to come in, I'm about to film because it's going to fit perfectly into my movie, and I put the camera right here, I'm going to, I don't like that there are empty seats up front, so I'm going to move some people around in front. I don't like everybody wearing black in the front because that looks weird, so I'm going to move people with different colored clothing around, I'm going to arrange you in a certain way, and because the camera is going to be at this level and I want to see a lot of people, I'm going to ask you to move forward, you to slide back, you to pick your head, and all that, I'm going to arrange you. All elements in front of the camera. I'm going to arrange the background because I can't just film anywhere with anything in the background. I'm going to somehow decorate the background or cover over the background. All of the elements in front of the camera. The arrangement and the choreography of everything in front of the camera. How characters move in and off of, into and off of the frame. How they move towards and away from the camera. The blocking of actors as they move around. All of those elements in conjunction with lighting, as we'll see in a minute, and etc. That's maybe the way you can organize these things in your head for the exam, whenever that comes up, after the paper. I do know that. All right. So Birth of a Nation, Griffith and first rules. First understanding of inter-frame narration. Again, we're talking about editing here. One of the things that you've already seen that we have not yet necessarily given word to yet is that when we watched Great Train Robbery, I pointed to you that the train the entire time traveled screen left. It pulled into the station. Okay, I know that it was a projection up here. Remember when the train comes in the window right here, that it was really a projection, but the train was still traveling screen left. Then when they go to get on the train outside, it's going screen left. The next time we see them, it's still, and the entire movie it's going screen left, so that when we get onto the top of the train, and it's actually, we're riding along with it this way, it's still going, in effect, screen left in that instance. That is, what's happened is that we have stayed, no matter where that train is going, traveling screen left, we have stayed on this side of the train. We're in the ticket office, now we're outside, now they're getting on the train, wherever we're cutting to. The train is always going this way. We have stayed on this side of the action, in that sense, right? Axis of action. Similarly, we recognize that if I want to film two people talking, I'm going to film person A and B talking. I'm looking down on them. This is a bird's eye, looking down on them just like this is, right? I'm looking down directly onto person A and person B. That the way that I'm going to film them, I'm going to put a camera right here. I'm sorry, pardon me. If I'm filming A and B, this is how I'm going to film, right? This image is going to look just like this. That world? Anyway, it's falling apart behind me. That's what that's going to look like, right? This is their faces now. Right? A and B. That's what it's going to look like. Now, if I want to film A, I'm going to put the camera right here. Right? So now I'm going to film, and this is going to be the image. This is what this image is going to look like. Right? This is the front of the face, and B is going to be hanging off the side. Do you see that? Or you see how I got that shot? And then similarly, if now B is going to be talking, I'm going to put the camera over here, and I'm going to film this direction, and this is what I'm going to get when I film this. Cool? You see how that's happened? So just as our train, we've stayed on this side of the action, the same thing has happened here. I have, in this example, I've made an establishing shot. I've established that A is on the left and B is on the right-hand side. In this way. When I cut now to A talking, A is, notice, still on the left-hand side, and B is still on the right-hand side. Same thing when I do, so we call this the shot, and then this we're going to call the reverse shot. Right? Establishing shot, shot, reverse shot. So anytime I'm doing this, I go shot, reverse shot with that. So it's not really the reverse, right? The reverse of this shot would be here. But what would happen? B would be on the left-hand side and A would be on the right-hand side. Cool? You see that? If I film from over here, I would get them mixed up. For continuity reasons, the camera stays on the same side of the action, whether it's big action like the train moving from far away sort of thing, or even very close, what we would call close-up to extreme close-up, or rather, these are close-ups, right? That way, the camera establishes an axis of action. This line, this line, and this line. Axis of action. Same thing, right? The axis of action. The camera does not move to the other side of that. One of the basic rules of cinematography. You see this in television shows, in almost every movie that you play. When they establish the location of people and objects in the frame, they're going to keep that so that it appears logical and linear. Why? Because reality is experienced that way. If I'm listening to these two guys talk, I don't jump to this side of them and listen to them, and then jump to this side. I sit here and go like this, right? So it's mimicking human perception in that way, right? One of the things we're going to say about classical audience cinema is there are very specific rules for the camera's movement and sort of thing. The first is what we're going to call the 180-degree rule of the axis of action. The rule I would probably put in quote marks because you violate it all of the time. Anytime you've got a cop show or an ER style show where some guy's been pulled into the ER with a meat cleaver to the head, you don't want to go, doctor, what are you going to do? The patient is dying, and cut back and forth between this, because that's really not very active. You're going to move the camera around the table as the guy's sitting there going, you know, whatever he's doing, right? And everyone's panicking. So you want to break the rule so that you activate the confusion for the audience and the panic nature of an ER situation when something really traumatic comes in. So it's a rule, but we break it all the time. But for early cinema, developing the continuity and linearity depended very, very much on obeying that rule. So the axis of action is this imaginary line across which the camera does not go. Action on one side, these characters in this instance, camera on the other side. Right? So it's an imaginary line in that sense. Basic cinematic grammar. You ever watch Seinfeld? You've never looked at his television before. You've seen the back of his television before, but when Kramer busts into the apartment, we look at the door, we might cut over to this side and then to this side to the kitchenette in Jerry's apartment, and any show that's got an apartment, and then you stay doing this. You stay on one side of this action. There are whole lots of reasons that television does that. There used to be always live audiences in that. But early cinema develops this rule because if I move the camera to this position, because of its influence from live theater, audiences might really think, hey, you should be showing me, because I'm sitting out here in that way. So you never want to bring attention to the film's construction. That's the verisimilitude, that linear unfolding. So you're maintaining screen direction by obeying the 180-degree rule. Then similarly, B is that one of the things you've not seen in any of the clips that I've showed you thus far, except for like Godfather sort of stuff, we haven't seen any editing inside of a scene. We've only seen cross-cutting, movement at different times and locations. So B, we want to change this to intercutting. Now, cross-cutting is we're going to be able to blow through this part pretty quick. It was the editing between different times and locations. We saw the Godfather clip on the first day of class, but we also, I just described it in the Great Train Robbery. You went from the train robbers, then back to the ticket taker office, to a different time, in that sense, editing between different times and locations. Intercutting here, what I'm calling image sentences, is that I can come edit into this scene in the classroom here, and now I can go to a close-up of this guy and a two-shot of those people, and in the back corner over there, I can edit within the same time and location. So intercutting is editing inside of the same time and space, maintaining linearity and flow. If we came into this classroom in our movie, and the camera established that the camera cuts in first in that corner right there, I'm going to be on screen left, correct? The camera's filming out this way. I'm going to be on the left side, correct? You're going to be on the right-hand side. So generally speaking, we're going to maintain that same direction. We're going to keep editing around as I edit to people sleeping, texting, whatever you're doing, paying attention or whatever. I'm going to edit around in that, but maintain my space that was established early on, and now I can just edit wherever I want inside of that same time and space and keep it in a very linear, very flowing fashion. So B we would better call intercutting rather than whatever it has up there. So we can go very quickly through cross-cutting, that indeed we know about editing in time and location. So Griffith is going to give us this much more fully than Edwin Porter, that in The Birth of a Nation, we're going to see a little antebellum of South that is before the Civil War, and it's going to be of a life that will be no more, right? It's very, very much about the way in which the coming Civil War is going to disrupt the genteel life of the Southern, right? It's very much on the side of slavery and the side of the Confederacy. And we are going to watch this Southern family for like 2.5 hours. And then for the last hour or so, they're going to get trapped by a bunch of recently freed slaves and carpetbaggers, that is, people from the North who were sympathetic with abolition, right? Who did not want slavery, and they came down here. Many people took advantage of that, but they were very genuinely in support of the breaking up of slavery. And this whole Southern white family is going to be trapped. and they're trapped by these freed slaves and these carpetbaggers, and the film is very sentimental towards them. And it's going to cut to close-ups of a little girl who's scared at Rihanna, and she's crying because she knows death is imminent, because that's what freed slaves do. They kill white people. Whatever. That's the way the film's going to do. And then it's going to edit to the Klan. We're going to see them getting ready. They're going to put it on their hoods. We're going to find out, by the way, why white sheets in just a minute. It's really educational. We're going to edit to them, the Klan who are getting ready. They're mounting up and dressing up their horses, in case you recognized it. Put white sheets all over the horses. Then it's going to cut back to the family, and this one guy who is sympathetic to them is going to be quivering while someone's fist comes in and goes, just showing him, like, this is what you get, this is what you deserve. And then it's going to cut back to the Klan, then it's going to come back, and then it's going to cut back, and it's going to get faster and faster, editing between different times and locations. We're going to hear Wagner's Ride of the Valkyries at that time. Da 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 da. A real heroic style of music, exactly the music that Hitler is going to pick up in 1928 when he gets his first podium speech. Right, that's 4 years, 5 years. When is he elected chancellor? 33, I think. He's elected chancellor in 33 in Germany. In 28, he's going to play that while he gives speeches. Da 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 da. Right, real super heroic Aryan music. Right? The perfect German, Wagner, doing this stuff. There's an interview with one of the cameramen, so he's like, in 1970, they're interviewing this guy, so he's like 147 years old when they're interviewing him. And he's described, so he's this little old guy, and he's talking, so he must have been kind of young when they were filming, and he goes, and it was unbelievable the way Griffith would edit back and forth. It felt like you were riding along with the Klan, and he gets like all animated and excited. You're totally like, dude, like, it's the Klan, man. You ought to be a little bit more sheepish about it here. But also what you can get is the excitement that must have come from editing in that way. A dynamic editing that brought these two disparate times and locations together, because ultimately the Klan's going to ride in and save the day, right, in that way. And so you can sense that his enthusiasm, I hope, wasn't just the racist crap, but was really him responding to the cinematic qualities of this stuff, of cross-cutting in this dynamic way. Related directly to that is that if you were paying attention to my description, we showed the family, then we showed the Klan, then we showed the family, and those shots of them got shorter and shorter. We editing back and forth, cross-cutting between them. We would slowly decrease the amount of time we showed the guys in the house, and then we'd show the guys in the getting ready. Then we'd show, and then we'd go faster, 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 edit together, just like if I showed you a car, and then a train, and then a car, and then a train, a car, and a train, and I made it faster and faster edits, you would expect, it's gonna, right? Heighten the tension within the frame. Decreasing the shot time, the length from one edit to the next edit, by decreasing that tends to increase dramatic tension. You know this, the difference between watching a car commercial for, let's see, a Porsche, if they did that sort of thing, made car commercial for a Porsche versus a Buick. That is, you don't edit a Porsche commercial or a Corvette commercial together in the same way that you edit a Buick commercial together. You want to sell it to your grandparents, so you slow it down. I'm sorry if you drive a Buick, but that idea, the car type, is the editing goes along with that. Right? You edit a speedster car or a muscle car, you edit it by really fast, showing the foot throwing the accelerator down, the cut to a close-up of the gear shifter slamming in second, my long hair flowing in the breeze, cut to, about really fast action, right? To increase the dramatic qualities of that. Similarly, or contrastingly, in the car that you want to sell to your grandparents, you show how comfortable and how easy it is to get in and out, and I don't know, whatever else you would show. Decreasing shot time tends to increase dramatic tension. Just ask Jason Bourne, right? Watch the Bourne movies sometime when he's chasing around in the Casbah or being chased in the Casbah. Actually, he chases and is chased almost simultaneously, which I never got. But regardless, those edits I bet you couldn't even put a tick mark every time there's an edit. They're so fast, increasing in an attempt to increase the dramatic tension of that chase sequence that's going on. Griffith is the guy who's teaching us the ways in which this style of these editing. So we call that accelerated montage. Montage is a fancy, the French word, it's not fancy, it's French, it's fancy. Montage, it's not. Anyway, French word montage means quick, dynamic, fast-paced editing, right? That in the montage, we saw a good example of cross-cutting montage with the Godfather clip, by putting more dynamic, editing them in a fast-paced manner. That's what we're going to call montage in like 2 class periods when we talked about Soviet cinema of the 1920s. So montage is dynamic editing, not flowing editing. If I'm doing a shot reverse shot like this, I'm not going to go back and edit dynamically. I'm going to flow in and out of these 2 shots. When he's done talking, I'm going to cut to get her response to him. When she asks a really offensive question, I'm going to cut back to him and see him go, what? And then I'll cut back to her and go, you heard me? And then I was like, I'm going to go back and forth in a linear fashion. Montage is a dynamic style of editing in which that quick, fast-paced tempo is kept up. And then, let's just start looking at some of this. Let's just check out some Griffith, because I know you're like, can't wait. This movie would have been shown in large new theaters that were being built in the teens and then through the 20s. And it would have had a live, probably a small live orchestra playing along with it. So we've already seen things that you've never seen in this class yet. Editing in time and space. We can show this scene, cut to another guy, cut back to this scene, and he can walk onto it, and you know who it is. The eldest son, as it said in an intertitle. Old school. Check, those are called intertitles, right? The image stops and then a title comes up. This is called an intertitle. So now we can edit back. We're in the same time and space. We've edited to a mid shot of him talking to the people in the cart. Now it's a full shot. Now it's getting full shot. Excuse me, I should define that, right? A full shot is the entire body. Right, the standard until this movie, the standard has been a full shot. The entirety of Great Train Robbery, the entirety of everything we saw by Georges Méliès, all done full shot. Just like in live theater. Remember, there's an influence of live theater, so the full shot was the standard because that's the way life was like, right? Live theater, rather, was like. You always saw every part of the body. Even if you're sitting down on a live stage, it's still a full shot. Now we can edit to close-ups and mid-shots. Mid-shot, right, would be like this. A close-up would be like this. A super close-up would be like Blair Witch crap. It scared the crap out of me. Oh, look at the woman in the back. Oh, this is just unbelievable. She's such a content slave. I love, right? I mean, this movie's going to show people, slaves out in the field going, I love picking cotton. They're smiling, they're happy, benevolent. This is melodrama right here. Don't you understand? That's the North, and that's the South. The South was just sitting there quietly and enjoying itself. Everybody was happy. And the wall of northern aggression, right? That's what it's going to be called for a long time. And anywhere in the Atlantic Journal Constitution, it was called the War of Northern Aggression. Oh, awesome, his cousins are coming, right? So cousins from the north are going to come down, and they're going to hook up. Well, okay, not in that way, but they're going to, like, you know, oh, actually, they are going to hook up in that way, too. Just a minute, it's real hot and bothered. It's going to really peach at you in a second. Right, so there's a gathering stored. There are hostilities, as it said before. So have you seen today's paper? Look at what is going on. I hate Lincoln. Don't worry, the movie doesn't like Lincoln at all. So on screen left, that's the boy you've already seen, and even if you're not making him out, the southern kid, and then the guy immediately to his left is the northern cousin who's come down. You can tell why it takes 3 hours and 20 minutes. Because he has people say stuff. Masks. I'll come back to the word masking, but this is a mask that's happening right there where it focuses you just on that one guy. Oh yeah, that's pretty good right there, huh? That's awesome. Just jump to some war. So check it out, a historical facsimile of the President Executive Office, couching it in the notion of historical truth. In that sense, regular appeals to that are happening directly on screen. You might have, in 1914, gone, whoa, that's Lincoln on film. Right? It would have been so dynamic at this time. But wow, I didn't know there were cameras back then. Because if you see the picture of the signing of this, it looks exactly like this. I mean, he's basing it based on the painting of this exact moment when Lincoln was signing the call for the war, the call for volunteers for the coming of the war. They have him stand up to show you that he's really tall, right, to authenticate it in that sort of way. So these must be, again, states' rights argument that's in there, right? The appeal to sovereignty of states, and that Lincoln abused his power, so that argument goes, that Lincoln abused his power with federal power over individual states' rights. See how it's more so on that side. It's clouded on the corners. It's more so on that side. This side, that's masking. Again, I'll come back to that as it's on there. But look how sad he is about it. He's like, this sucks. I don't really want to do this because slavery's kind of all right, but I have to. And he cries. You know, wipes some tears and. This is not what we want. We want some war's bitter sacrifice. All right, here we go. So we watch battle scenes. I've skipped over them. You might see a little bit right here. Yeah, we will. So battle scenes that use the background, the midground, and the foreground. Action happening on different planes, not just right up in front of the camera. So here comes the southern guys. I mean the northern guys to get out. This is our northern cousin who just got shot. Southern cousin comes up and goes, "Oh, dude, we meet on the battlefield. Holy crap, cuz!" Like literal cuz. And he's like, "Oh, but you died." Anyway, the southern guy, "Oh, damn it, shot in the back, bud. Damn Yankee. Right? And then here's the part I was talking about. They do kind of hook up. It's something kind of weird, but I'm reading into it. Hey! Whoa! Oh, wait. Hold on. You see that? That's terrible. I'm reading a little into it, of course, but it's totally bizarro world. Right? Shot. Reverse shot. Reverse shot. All right? We're editing back and forth in that setup. Stay on this side. He's always on screen right in that sense, and the other guy's just left of center. And, oh, got it. I'm totally reading into it, but that's melodrama, right? There's nothing else going on. It's just melodramatic in that sense, right? Just elaborating. Right? You know what's melodramatic? There's a great movie that stars Jack Nicholson, Leonardo DiCaprio, and Brad Pitt. Is that right? Departed? Is that The Departed?
Matt Damon.
Matt Damon, not Brad Pitt. Matt Damon. And anytime Matt Damon dies on camera, or anytime Leonardo DiCaprio dies on camera, insert Titanic here, how long and drawn out that is, right? To amplify, to bring about the drama, to exaggerate, that's melodramatic. Well, in The Departed, which is based on a much better movie called Infernal Affairs, a movie from Hong Kong that's absolutely much better than Departed, and I like The Departed. That all three, Jack Nicholson, A-list actor, Matt Damon, and Leonardo DiCaprio, all we would call A-list actors, all three of them die in a movie, which you can't name another movie in which three major player actors die in the movie. I mean, not at the end, in the last final shot. And all three of them, who's the last one? Matt Damon die in the elevator, gets killed in the elevator towards the end? It doesn't matter who it is, but all three of them that die in almost the exact same way. And that is, one guy, an elevator opens up and then blam, a bullet comes out, slams Matt Damon to the back, right through his face or whatever it does, and the camera is looking at him into the elevator, bam, and the camera just turns and walks away and goes and follows the guy who killed him. Any other movie, the camera's going to go, oh, and he's going to be like, slowly sliding down and like trying to, say something like, Rebecca. Some crap, he's going to say some girl's name or something like that, and we're going to watch him slide to the end, and, that's melodrama. And in The Departed, all three of those and the two other minor, like D-list actors die, and the camera pays no attention to them. That's remarkable that a movie could do that. Not pay attention to those three guys dying. I mean, they get blown away and the camera moves away from them. That's not melodrama. The opposite of melodrama. So we see the melodrama of cousins dying on top of one another. I'm sorry. Anyway, but it's melodrama rather than you reading some homosexual matrix into it. All right, so let's keep going. Or me, I forced it on you. Oh, the last gray days. Beans again? The guy's choked up. We can jump ahead. We don't need to keep watching this. So if I pause this and I go to my notes, just for a second, don't worry, we'll get more. And here, right, what we have here is D, multiple actions happening on a single frame. I brought that up just a moment ago when there was action in the back, the middle, and the foreground. Remember that with Méliès in 1902, all the action had to happen almost on a single plane. So like when they load the cannon with the rocket that's going to go to the moon, all the people the girls push on the backs of the other people, or the guys at the meeting at the beginning of the film are on those risers, trying to get it as close to a single plane as possible. Now Griffith has opened up all elements, right? All the way into the back, so you can have multiple actions happening on a single plane in that way. Down here is masking. I'll come back to that in just a moment. Let's check out a little bit more of it. But that's what you have here. This would have been magnificent at the time, even though it looks plain and antiquated to you. And to see a shot of that great distance of action happening that far away would have been revolutionary in that sense. So like so many stories that are also eminently recognizable to you, this is very much of what we would call an epic. Right? What makes the Odyssey or the Iliad before it epics is not because they were written a long time ago or that they're long in that way. An epic means that they are telling stories that are both universal and individual in that sense. So Star Wars is an epic in that sense because it deals with good versus bad and vagaries of all of that sort, but it also deals with this little relationship between Luke, Leia, and Dad. Right? So it's good versus bad, the big picture, the universal sort of investigation, and the particular. So this movie, like Star Wars, this movie way before that, was telling epic stories so you could recognize the truth of humans if you didn't know the specific of this story even. So the Odyssey, right, the Iliad and the Odyssey are both individual stories about Agamemnon and through Odysseus, but they're also stories about humanity and humans' relationship with the supernatural and with gods and with time and with love and that sort. This war thing kind of sus. She hear, war, war, war. If I hear one other word about war, I think I'm going to throw up. What movie's that? Gone with the Wind. All right, cool. Yeah, Gone with. Is that the first line spoken in Gone with the Wind? War, war, war. Let's keep going. What is this? The Feast of the Returning Brother. Sounds like Isaiah chapter 24, verse 3. I'm just making that up. Yeah, that looks like an awesome brooch. Just kidding. It'd be the idea of like, well, we can use cotton, not for the war, but for trying to do some. Faded night. Nah, we don't care about this. Election results. Let's go to 15. Do we have chapters? What is that listed? 12, 13, 14, 15. Oh, they're only 24, don't worry.
That seems interesting.
Based on a historical facsimile. All right, notice he stuffed in the ballot box more than one vote, right? The white southern gentleman comes up and they say, I'm afraid. Hey, anybody recognize the Spike Lee reference in here? Oh, I'm sorry, it would be reversed. Spike Lee, 40 Acres and a Mule. That's his production company. See 40 Acres and a Mule on it?
What's his production?
That's the name of it, yeah. Which is what restaurate, right? That was the guarantee, right? That was the for freed slave was you got 40 acres and a mule. I'd leave too. While we're here. You're not going to get the questions right because I'm going to give you like 5 answers. Hot dog! We won! Well, we need to get to the... chapter 17, a white sheet. We need to get into the House of Legislatures here. See, after a photograph, right, so he saw a photograph and goes, well, I'm just going to build my scene around that famous photograph of the South Carolina legislature. He dissolves into it, right? There were no people there. Then slowly another image takes over, and now everybody's there. That's called a dissolve, where one image slowly takes over another image. He develops that, so now we're in the the Gold Dome in Columbia. That's pretty good. The most interesting DJ I know working right now is a guy named DJ Spooky. Anybody ever heard of DJ Spooky? Check him out sometime. He put together an entire album and show called Rebirth of a Nation, in which he takes this movie and re-edits the whole thing and does more or less like a laser light show educational thing to this movie. Quite fascinating. Anyway, check out DJ Spooky, the Subliminal Kid sometime. Is it time to go? Oh shit. Alright, well I'll wrap up the end of him.